rent and all those things these days. Now, how can we make this any better? Well, we're required here and any other university, we're required, if I want to do a research study, I have to get a research grant to do that. I can't even be doing this molecular work that I've done here without a research grant to help pay the costs of it, because state taxpayers turn our lights on and keep the electricity going on in here. But with the economy the way it is, state taxpayers can't pay for us to do an echo for a research study or even run any of these samples for research study. So if you want to help with any of this and you have an extra $10 or something to help defer the costs for echoes and future identification of another mutations, I'd encourage you to give to Meurs Animal Foundation or the Doberman Pinscher Club of America. I know they have a health fund. I think they do it with Meurs. The American Kennel Club, Washington State University, Ohio State University, whatever your favorite vet school is, because unfortunately, veterinary medicine, there's not a lot of money in it, and we're not allowed to discount our prices at all. And so I think that's the same for cardiologists in your practice near you. They just can't. Otherwise, we'd be closing the doors. And there are practices out there that are closing the doors, unfortunately. Have I seen any correlation with color dilution? Black, red, fawn, blue, is it tracked, and what might the percentages be? I don't know that information. I would say that I think a higher percentage of dogs that I have personally studied tend to be black, but I don't have any prevalence information on that, on colors of Dobermans. It's certainly something that if you guys thought it was interesting, we could add that to our form pretty easily. And so we can make that optional just like we have the other information. If you want to write down the color and then we can try to track that, we'd be happy to. If a dog has a very solid and muscular body, is that a good sign? We don't know whether specific body types are more protected or not. What is the shelf life of the media used for tissue samples? The shelf life is pretty good, actually, probably about a year. So the question is, here's a veterinarian that sees a large amount of Dobermans. Would it be useful for me to have some on hand? Absolutely, if you're willing to collect some for us. I have the solution. I can send you out some samples of it, and if you don't use it in a year, we have to pay for the cost of these things, but at this point, it's not that costly. So if I send it out to you and you don't use it, it's probably not the end of the world. So if you'd like to email me, I could send you some solution with the directions. It's super easy. Here's the solution in a little jar. Take a small sample with a scalpel of the skeletal muscle, ideally a piece of left ventricle, a couple of pieces if you have time and the willingness. Drop it into that solution, put the cap on it, and just ship it back to us. Doesn't take refrigeration or freeze or anything like that. Next question is, what ideas do you have how a deficiency in PDK4 causes the disease? What this enzyme does is it helps turn off another enzyme that moves energy into the mitochondria. And when it's not needed, when moving energy into the mitochondria isn't needed, the job of this enzyme is tell the other enzyme, take a break, we don't need you right now. What we believe this mutation does is it never is able to turn off the other one. So what I think happens is because that other enzyme, PDH, is chronically going, that leads to a buildup of byproducts on the other side, and those as a negative feedback start turning off other things. So I believe by the fact that this PDH never gets turned off, because it doesn't get turned off, the byproducts accumulate and those go around and turn other things off. So, and that's the things that we're studying with the PDH activity and the PDK activity. How many grams of cardiac tissue do you need from euthanized dogs? It's a small amount. I'd have to, I can email you this week or next week perhaps, because I have to go to town this week. But it's, a piece of tissue the size of a nickel would get us a long, long way. I don't remember exactly the number of grams. Do I expect the majority of heterozygous positives and homozygous positives will develop dilated cardiomyopathy in their lifetime. I do, but again, I do also believe, we have seen this in the other forms of cardiomyopathy that we have studied and found mutations in, that these things have a tremendous variability in penetrance. So there will definitely be some dogs that have this mutation that will not develop disease. That doesn't mean the mutation isn't causative. That means that that dog, for whatever reasons, has a low penetrance. I believe that it's 55% negative, 39% positive het, and 6% homozygous, which is almost identical to the 1,000 that I told you about, where it was, in our 1,000, it was 53, 39, and 7. I believe that it's 55% negative, 39% positive het, and 6% homozygous, which is almost identical to the 1,000 that I told you about, where it was, in our 1,000, it was 53, 39, and 7. Okay, next question. Would I be doing any harm by adding fish oil to my dog's diet? Any indication that fish oil extends a dog's life with dilated cardiomyopathy? No problem. Fish oil certainly, in dogs, once they've developed cardiomyopathy and they're in heart failure, seems to slow down muscle loss, so it's valuable for that. There's some very preliminary data that fish oils may decrease number of ventricular premature complexes, but only a small amount. But fish oils are very safe, and if you want to give fish oil, no problem. How stable is this RNA prep solution? It's quite stable. It's just kept on a shelf. Doesn't need to be refrigerated. So if somebody knows of somebody who would like that RNA preparation sample or solution sent to you, just email me and we will send you some. So what we don't know is, as we said, in people, there are at least 24 different genes. In boxers with a different form of cardiomyopathy, we know there are at least 2 different mutations. Only one has been found, but there are definitely a small number of dogs that would appear to have a different mutation. We believe that is the case in the Doberman Pinscher. So far, a very small number of dogs. But again, please, if you have negative results and you know your dog is positive, please let us know. We don't mind that at all, and it's very, very helpful information for it. So unfortunately, it is likely there will be more than one genetic mutation dog. Here's a question about coenzyme Q10. Is there any indication that coenzyme Q10 is beneficial as Dobermans age? There is not. Coenzyme Q10 has not been well studied, though, but there's actually no veterinary data that suggests that coenzyme Q10 is valuable. So it doesn't hurt. If you want to give coenzyme Q10, that's just fine. But there's no evidence that it actually does anything. Would blood be superior to saliva? Absolutely. And I have contacted a small number of folks about this. If your dog is negative for the mutation and you know it is positive, it's been evaluated and it clearly has the disease, and you've sent us a swab sample for us, we may ask you, or if you know you sent us a swab, if you would send us a blood sample. The reason is, it's not that swab is more accurate or less accurate than blood. Why we want the blood is, as I mentioned before, I used up a lot of sample in trying to find this mutation. It is likely we'll use up a lot of sample trying to find another mutation. And a swab sample only has a very small amount of DNA on it. So for the test, yes or no is mutation there, a swab is fine. But for additional research, if your dog is negative but actually has the disease, it would be much more helpful to us to have a blood sample. And I'm trying to go back as I have time. Once this semester finishes and the students are gone for break and I have a little more time, I'll try to go back and look at some of that data, and if I see that you've sent an echo report and it's positive and the dog is negative, I may contact you and ask you about getting a blood sample. We know there's this issue with genetic penetrance, in which case that not everybody that has a mutation, the disease penetrates the dog to the same extent. We have no idea what affects that. It might be environmental, genetic, diet, daily activities. We don't know what percentage of Dobermans have this mutation, but based on the 1,000 that so closely mirrored Finland, I would bet that about 40% of them have it. Now, But clearly, we can't remove 40% of the gene pool from a breed. That would be very detrimental. And it's not necessary to do that because we know that some dogs will have a lower penetrance of the disease. And so what we need to figure out is what causes the low penetrance so we can manipulate that. And also, you'll need to look at every individual dog and decide if it comes back, particularly if it comes back positive heterozygous, what you know about penetrance in that particular family. Is there any history of dogs being symptomatic for it? That may suggest to you that there's a more penetrant line. So here's an example, and then I'll go back to the questions. In Maine Coon cats, we know that 35% of the Maine Coon population that have tested have the mutation. But we can't remove 35% of those without causing detriment to the gene pool. Same thing with the Dobermans. So what we recommend is that you use this as a tool, not a black and white test to remove dogs, but you use it as a tool for you to have additional information about your families, because at this time we don't know about the penetrance. Does vitamin E have any value in addition to fish oil? I don't know. Vitamin E and in fish oils vitamin E is a useful thing. There is a relationship between how much vitamin E and how much of the fish oils you need. Do I have a relationship with Guelph to obtain Holter results? I get along very well with Dr. O'Grady. We have shared some graduate students. But generally with medical records, we legally are not allowed to release them without the owner's permission. So, unfortunately, and this is a legal thing. It's not even a university thing. So you have to give permission for Dr. Estrada to send samples here and that sort of thing. So you would have to give permission for Dr. O'Grady to release Holter results to us. Here's someone that has a 2-year-old dog that is homozygous. Besides Holtering and echoing, is there anything that they can do for them? They've already had 2 dogs that have died from cardiomyopathy, and they don't just want to watch the dog die. Really, very closely watching it at this point with the echo and the Holter, because those are the most sensitive early indicators. And the only other thing we can say is probably not extreme exercise at this point. And we're working very hard to try to identify other things as quickly as we can. Is there any research indicating the use of magnesium supplementation for dogs with arrhythmia or supplementation with magnesium as a preventative? Magnesium does have a role in the heart, particularly when it is too low. But the problem is that you can't measure magnesium. If you measure magnesium in the blood, it is not an accurate predictor of magnesium in the heart muscle. We do not know of a specific relationship between magnesium and this form of cardiomyopathy, and it's probably, if you want to supplement, it's probably safe, but you have to be really careful with some supplementations, including magnesium, because nobody knows how much to give in an animal that has normal levels, and giving too much could cause problems. But there's no known relationship between magnesium and this disease. In general health, what is the maximum vitamin E that can be supplemented? I don't honestly know. That would be a nutritionist question, and I'd have to consult with our veterinary nutritionist to find that information out for you. I'm sorry. Most pet foods, though, if you're feeding a general pet food, Purina, Hills, Iams,